Whenever we talk about illegal immigration, the Democrats always conveniently forget that under Joe Biden, it was the cartels who actually had total operational control of our southern border. And that, of course, led to a huge humanitarian crisis in terms of human trafficking. And unfortunately, a lot of that human trafficking was facilitated by our own tax dollars through NGOs. And that's exactly what we're going to see called out today by Representative Eli Crane to his Democrat counterparts over in the House of Representatives. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
You know, as is the case with all of our districts, there are many organizations that do incredible work that help resettle new Americans and refugees. We lose sight of the selfless humanitarian work that these local non-government organizations do when we rope them in with the partisan grievances that we're hearing here today. In my own district, there's hundreds of refugees that have settled in just the last 3 months alone. But in the last year across our country, over 100,000 refugees have come to this great nation. And they rely on the housing, case management, nutrition, and job placement services provided by these NGOs.
You can see our colleagues are very upset that we're having this hearing today. They don't want to talk about this stuff. They don't want to talk about the 300,000 kids that we still don't know where they are. They're upset that President Trump got elected. They're upset that he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, and we're backing him up here in Congress. This is what the American people voted for because they saw 4 years of the carnage that these open border policies plagued on the United States. And we're talking about the NGOs that they used as middlemen to carry out their operations, like the Catholic charities they used to facilitate, normalize, and accelerate illegal immigration into this country. Ms. Hopper, you've worked closely with trafficking victims and survivors. I'd like to explore the role that the NGOs have played in enabling the trafficking and exploitation of unaccompanied alien children. Under the last administration, what safeguards were put in place to protect vulnerable unaccompanied children?
I previously discussed the post-placement welfare checks, which consisted of 2 phone calls. Again, if the sponsor didn't answer, the case was no longer followed up on. But there was also a notice of concern hotline where people could report concerns about the unaccompanied child's safety. But what this administration found was from August 2023 to January of 2025, 65,000 calls went unanswered. Those calls spanned from, complaints about stale bread all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were. Nothing happened with that call. That call went unanswered until this administration took office, went through those 65,000 calls, made follow-ups, conducted a welfare check, and now that child has been rescued and that sponsor has been arrested. These are the safeguards that were put in place, but accountability and oversight was not had.
So you're telling this committee that the Biden administration, while they were letting all of these unaccompanied minors into the country, and as we've talked about today, they weren't keeping track of them, they issued these kids a hotline that they could call if they had trouble with the sponsor family that they were put with. And you're saying that 65,000 calls to this hotline designated to protect these kids went unanswered? Is that what you're telling this committee?
Yes, sir.
Wow. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I believe you also said, Ms. Hopper, that according to your research, it was easier to adopt.
I said that it was easier to get a child, yes, than to adopt a dog. You actually had to provide more paperwork to adopt a pet from a pet shelter than you did to sponsor a child.
Yeah, and think about it, guys. This is exactly why the American people are so upset. This is why they voted for the president, and this is why they voted for this agenda, to not only remove people from this country, to secure our borders, but to find these kids. I mean, this is completely atrocious in a day and age where we're starting to wake up to the realities of sex trafficking and what's going on with these kids. They let all these kids in. We still don't know where over 300,000 of these kids are. And you're sitting here testifying, saying that they gave a hotline for these kids to report if they were okay, if they needed anything, and 65,000 calls went unanswered. Do you know how many staffers the administration assigned to answering these phones and helping these kids?
One.
One staffer? Any idea how many hours a day this staffer was working?
No.
Maybe that's why there were 65,000 calls that weren't answered from these little kids, huh? Unbelievable. Thank you. I yield back.
So it seems like with every layer that is uncovered, it keeps getting worse and worse. Because don't forget, 80% of the women and girls who were transported by cartels were assaulted along the way. Then, of course, you have these unaccompanied minors that just seem to have disappeared. They're not with their sponsor families. They're not with their actual families. They're just released into the interior country, and now they're gone, and we're still trying to locate them, okay? But, of course, what's happening here is the children that we do know of were given a phone number to call in case of emergency, and 65,000 of those went unanswered. All right, so if you're in trouble, the government will not be there to help you, apparently. Okay, that was just the standard operating procedure of the Biden administration. But of course, a lot of this was actually facilitated through our own tax dollars by these NGOs. And in one interview back in 2023 with the House Committee, the then patrol chief agent of the Del Rio sector, Jason Owens, described how NGOs were complicit in funneling millions of inadmissible aliens into the country, saying a large portion of the aliens were being given parole, and then ICE would turn them over to the NGOs for them to travel to wherever they were going to go while they were awaiting their hearing. All right, so NGOs, of course, were in charge of funneling the people all throughout this country. And many of these NGOs were actually coaching illegal immigrants to say, hey, I'm actually a refugee. I'm seeking asylum because, of course, that's a whole other set of standards under our U.S. law. And what also happened, of course, is that the U.S. Committee for Refugee Immigrants, another nonprofit NGO, offered free legal representation to illegal aliens who appear before U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, immigration courts, and Board of Immigration Appeals. USCRI incentivizes the trafficking and smuggling of minors by advocating for the expansion of the unaccompanied minor refugee program, as well as other programs that aim to increase the processing and acceptance of illegal alien minors. All right, so they wanted more unaccompanied minors to come into this country, right? That sounds like a huge trafficking scheme to me that honestly is not very safe for the children. So when all of this money was funneled from our pockets into these NGOs, what type of incentive does that create, right? Obviously, they want more. They want to expand these programs. And even though it's a non-government organization, they're getting an awful lot of funding from the federal government. And so much so you actually have these CEOs getting raises, right? Because these nonprofits, as long as the company itself isn't turning a profit, they can pay themselves whatever the crap they want. And all of this, of course, acted like a magnet for illegal immigrants to come into this country, which of course only made the cartels more wealthy, which of course just exploited more and more illegal immigrants, and of course caused this huge problem with unaccompanied minors disappearing into this country. But of course, this is what the Democrats wanted. It was all by design to bolster their voting rolls, no matter what the human cost happened to be. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.